November 1923, Hitler tried to win ultimate power by force. Convinced of his destiny, he attempted to overthrow the German government. Germany was under a state of emergency, following a period of political unrest and economic turmoil, including hyperinflation, where bundles of banknotes were more useful as children's building blocks than as cash.
Germany is in tremendous chaos at this particular time, and so Hitler thinks now is the moment for this coup.
His plan was to overthrow the local government in Munich and then march on Berlin to take over the whole of Germany. He knew the backing of both the people and the army were crucial to his success. He believed he would get both once the revolution began.
This day really illustrates just how fantastical Hitler was and how his thinking was way divorced from reality. He's not considered the consequences to himself if it all falls apart, because he thinks that it can't possibly go wrong.
The coup began at this beer hall on the evening of the 8th of November 1923. Some of Munich's politicians were holding a meeting here when hundreds of Hitler's paramilitary stormtroopers surrounded the building. Inside, Hitler jumped up on a chair and fired a shot into the ceiling. He then took 3 Bavarian government leaders hostage and tried to persuade them to join his revolution at gunpoint.
Because they're trapped with a guy with a gun, they say, of course we're going to support it. And Hitler doesn't take them prisoner, he lets them go.
That was his big mistake. Once free, they immediately withdrew their support for the coup. Soon after, it became clear that neither the army nor the police were going to back the revolution. The next day, Hitler, with his stormtroopers, marched on the War Ministry. It was his last-ditch attempt to spark a popular uprising. The police opened fire, and 14 Nazis were killed. Hitler himself nearly died when the person standing next to him was shot dead.
Hitler dislocates his shoulder and he's taken to a friend's house, and he realises that his first attempt to overthrow Germany by force has failed.
2 days later, he was arrested and charged with high treason.
Because he had this belief almost in the magic nature of reality, that if he had enough will, the forces of providence, the forces of destiny would somehow make reality open up in front of him, like the Red Sea dividing. He completely misread the forces of nationalism at work in Germany in 1923.
With Hitler in jail and the Nazi Party banned, the reality that his political career was probably over hit him hard. It had the same effect as the Art Academy rejection and the end of World War I. This third devastating blow provoked a typically extreme reaction.
Hitler considered suicide after the failed coup, and that's because to him his failure was such an insult, it was such an injury to his ego that he couldn't contemplate living anymore. And that's very, very typical of somebody who is totally enmeshed in a fantasy identity.
Yet this wasn't the end for Hitler. Once again, he managed to turn this personal catastrophe around. By the time he was sent to trial, he decided to take on his own defence. For most, this would be a reckless course of action. But for Hitler, the orator, it paid off.
The right-wing judge basically gives Hitler the floor to give daily speeches on nationalism. And these speeches get printed throughout the German press, and now Hitler, although he's been a small-town agitator, now becomes a national celebrity.
he was found guilty of high treason, a crime that carried the death penalty. But the judges were so taken by him that they handed him a lenient sentence. He got 5 years, to be served here in Landsberg prison. But he didn't exactly do hard time.
He's allowed to have people coming and going. He has, sort of sherry parties and wine parties inside the prison itself. He's treated really with kid gloves.
Amongst all the socialising, Hitler wrote a book, dictating much of it to Rudolf Hess, who was also serving time for his part in the failed coup. It was a consolidation of his political thinking, an ideology that had been forming since the end of World War I. It set out his conviction that Germany could only ever be great if every Jew was removed from German soil, by any means necessary. It was a book that would change history. It was My Struggle, Mein Kampf.
Adolf Hitler is basically given what is a sabbatical to write a book that's going to overthrow the German state and cause the Second World War and the Holocaust.
For all of Hitler's talent at speaking, it didn't translate onto the page.
It's a rambling, indigestible, overlong, incoherent tract with a few bits of really interesting and illuminating considerations, particularly on propaganda and how to win the masses over, and how to speak to them and how to get them to support you.
Along with writing his book, the quiet of the prison cell gave Hitler the opportunity to learn from his mistakes, that his destiny would never be fulfilled by the bullet, but through the ballot box. The failure of the coup and his prison sentence should have spelt the end for Hitler. Instead, they gave him a renewed purpose. After being jailed for just over a year, Hitler was released for good behaviour. While inside, the Nazi Party had splintered. But once free, Hitler immediately re-established his leadership over the group. He set about getting power by democratic means. To start with, Hitler and the Nazis were only ever viewed as on the lunatic fringe. But all that changed 5 years later.